AI-generated images depicting Donald Trump with excited black supporters are spreading across the internet like wildfire, according to a new BBC investigation. Now, since they're AI images, obviously they're not real, they're not authentic, they're not depicting something that actually happened. And if you're tempted to believe that Russia or some other nefarious foreign actor is behind the misleading images, the BBC looked into that and found that American Trump supporters are actually the ones behind the, dishonest AI images that are spreading. So with that said, let's take a look at one of the examples. The image you're looking at is in fact fake. It is in fact AI generated, and it's one of the images that's been spreading online. So it looks real, but if you look closely, you can see a few giveaways that indicate it's actually an AI generated image. For instance, the man on the far left of the image has a ring finger that abruptly stops. It looks like his finger kind of stopped rendering or didn't render appropriately. There's also a weird coloration around Trump's fingers on his left hand. And then if you look at the hat and the shirt with text on them, you'll notice that the text is just gibberish. So that plays a role in kind of determining that this isn't an authentic image. But look, most people aren't going to dissect an image that closely. They're just gonna see it and think, oh, look, Trump has a lot of support among black voters. And also, to be fair, there is a trend happening among the black voting base that could kind of predispose one to believing an image like this is real. Trump has increased his support among black voters, but not to the extent where he's like going to holiday parties and everyone's like wrapping their arms around him and like, supporting him in the way that's being depicted in these images.
Yeah. For 98% of people that look at that image for half a second, they're never gonna pay attention to the flaws that people found. They're gonna think that it's real. There's no reason not to, because it's not an outrageous picture. It's just Trump with black people. But isn't that funny that they had to use AI for that? Like they can't find pictures of Trump with a lot of black people around him, even though he's 77 years old. That to me is amazing in and of itself, that they have to doctor these pictures to make him seem like he'd ever hang out with any black people. That's the most damning part of the story. So, and of course the people doing this and pretending that Trump and black people get along so well are largely white Republicans. Of course. Look, there's two parts of the story. One is we're screwed. AI is changing everything so that you can't tell what's real and what's not real. We already had huge problems with fake news. Now it just got way larger. Number two is the people who did fake news, where that term came from, was the Trump campaign back in 2016, when they would pump out these fake articles on Facebook over and over and over again. And sometimes the Russians would do it, etc., and that became part of the Mueller report. They weren't coordinating, but the Russians were doing it on behalf of Trump. Trump, to be fair, flipped it really well on mainstream media. He started referring to mainstream media as fake news, even though he was the one who was doing the fake news. And then everyone's mind settled on, oh, mainstream media is fake news. That was really well done, and I don't often give Trump credit for anything, let alone strategy, but that worked. And now they're back to doing fake news, fake pictures, then soon there'll be fake videos. And then afterwards, Trump will blame other people. And then it'll probably work.
I remember one of the fake news stories that came out in 2016 alleged that Fidel Castro had endorsed Bernie Sanders for president. And like, there were so many people that I personally know spreading that on social media, and it made me so mad because it was already proven to be a fake story. But people,
no, but that's blue MAGA, right? Blue MAGA will believe anything, just like red MAGA. When red MAGA believed that Hugo Chavez, the ghost of Hugo Chavez, stole the election in favor of Biden in 2020. Meanwhile, blue MAGA is like, oh yeah, Fidel Castro's backing Bernie Sanders. Like they believe that instantly. And remember that at MSNBC, they kept talking about how if Bernie wins, there's gonna be executions on Wall Street, and that his supporters were the brown shirts, even though he was the most prominent Jewish presidential candidate in history. Like there's no end to that kind of deception as well. That's just the regular old mainstream media deceptions. that leads to that in right-wing media. But this is new age deception.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to just give you a little more information about the image that we looked at and who's been spreading it. So to your point, Cenk, one of the conservative radio show hosts has been spreading this. Right-wing radio show host Mark Kaye. I'm not familiar with him, but he apparently posted the image alongside an article about Trump's support with black voters without disclosing that the image that he posted was not a real image, it was AI generated. He told the BBC the following: "I'm not a photojournalist. I'm not out there taking pictures of what's really happening. I'm a storyteller. If anybody's voting one way or another because of one photo they see on a Facebook page, that's a problem with that person, not with the post itself." But look, I actually disagree with that take because, one of the arguments by Democrats is that, Donald Trump is biased against minorities, he's bigoted and all of that. And so if you start generating fake images of Trump appearing to have this support among black voters, someone who might not have the resources, including the time to delve into politics as deeply, might see an image like that and say, oh, maybe those allegations against Trump aren't real. Look at this image of him, buddying up with black voters, So that misleading image could actually speak volumes to certain voters. So I disagree with what he's saying there.
Yeah, 100%. And what kind of excuse is that? Well, I don't deal in facts, I'm a storyteller. Okay, Mark, if that's the standard, you're a talk show host, I'm a talk show host. What if we started saying on the show about how, you love to sleep with, well-endowed males? And then we did AI generated photos of you doing just that. And we said, whoa, we're just storytellers. That is the weakest excuse in the world for flat out lying to try to trick your audience. So Mark, don't worry, we're honest, we would never do that. You, on the other hand, are hiding behind this storyteller excuse.
Now let's go to another example of an AI generated image. This one was actually produced by a satirical account. So it wasn't produced for any nefarious reasons. Unfortunately though, the image went viral when it was posted by a different account alongside a caption that claimed Trump stopped his motorcade to meet with the voters in the image, right? Now obviously that never happened.
So that picture is weirdly effective. It does. No, it is. It gave me, and look, everybody has a different reaction to it. I'm just telling you my reaction. My reaction to it when I first saw it was, man, if that was real, that makes him look cool. And it makes him look like he doesn't mind hanging out with black folks and hearing what they thought, etc. But the reason why it's fake is because Trump has never done that his whole life. He's never hung out with a bunch of black guys who was like, hey, what do you guys think? Hey, what, etc.
He has during his rally speeches when certain people are perfectly placed right behind him.
Yeah. That's why he said in the last election cycle, when he was giving a speech and he saw a black guy in the audience, he said, there's my black.
God.
That's why you gotta do these pictures.
Dude, both of these old ass men have said such cringeworthy things about black voters, right? Like for instance, Biden saying that black voters who don't vote for him aren't black. How cringeworthy was that? And then you have Trump with that disgusting statement. It's just terrible.
So look, we're the fairest show in America. Like Biden promised black voters that he was gonna get them voting rights, bare minimum, right? And then he didn't even try. He barely tried and then he gave up on it immediately because there's no donor interest in that. So having said that, have Democrats over the last 40 years fought for civil rights of African Americans more than Republicans? Not close, definitely not remotely close. Not that the Democrats are champions, it's that the Republicans haven't bothered at all. In fact, they fought against civil rights since the Southern strategy began. That's why I keep going back to this point, because Trump should go onto a stoop with a bunch of black guys and talk to them.
Yeah, and
take that picture for real.
Every candidate would be smart to do that, yeah.
Yeah, and so should Biden, etc. And that would actually be really effective. The problem is, the reason they don't do that is because they really don't want to listen to them. And that's the saddest part of all.
I mean, isn't that what the insiders refer to as retail politics?
Yeah, but notice they never do this type of retail politics. That's why they need these fake pictures. Because if Trump went and talked to a normal set of black voters, that was a mix, that weren't all plants or Democrats or whatever, right? He would hear a lot of things that did not make him happy. And he would hate that.
Same with Biden. Actually, that's a really good point. You're right. You're right. I mean, look, I think it's true that some of the promises that Biden made toward black voters who really worked hard in the runoff elections in Georgia, the 2 Senate runoff elections, that was in 2020, right? Or was it in 2021? It was in 2021.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The runoff elections.
Runoff.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, he promised a voting rights bill, and he didn't even fight for it. Not even close. It totally fizzled immediately.
And the media, by the way, totally dropped it. Like they were like, oh yeah, if you get the runoffs, the 2 Georgia senators, oh, you're definitely gonna have voting rights. And then they dropped it like it was a bad habit, and the media was like, shh. Did you hear that he passed other bills? Okay, he's like the greatest president in the last 50 years in terms of his record. They don't tell you all the giant failures, and it's so you can tell. Look, we're not trying to like dump on Trump. The Democrats have a bunch of other problems too. But what's amazing, and I got this when I ran for Congress back in 2020. Real people say all the time, I've never seen a politician, because they'll take pictures, like Democrats has tons of pictures with black folks, usually at a party with really rich black folks, or well-connected black folks, or people within the Democratic Party, etc. How often do these politicians actually go and talk to real people? Very, very few amount of times.
Like, I have a crazy idea. How about you don't take voters for granted? And I think, for the longest time, Democrats have just assumed that they're going to get the support of the black vote, and there's nothing more to it. And look, to be fair, the majority of black voters still support the Democratic Party, but you're starting to see a trend of some black voters now either refusing to engage, or they're starting to trickle over to the right wing, and you're seeing an increase of black voter support for Trump, which is amazing.
So last thing on this, guys. What the Democrats are doing and what's causing this giant problem for them electorally, because now Biden, he won the black vote in 2020 with 92%. 92% of black vote went to Biden. It's amazing, but not amazing in American history over the last 40 years, because the Republicans did the Southern strategy, which is, hey, we're gonna pick up the racist voters in the South, and we're going to be dead set against civil rights and against black people voting, etc. So black people naturally gravitated to the Democratic Party. But now, just a couple of years later, it went from 92 down to 71. He's lost 21 points with African Americans. On that stat alone, Biden's already done. He barely won last time in the Electoral College. You can't lose 21% of the black vote. And so what's happening to black voters is the same thing that's happening to progressives, to populists, to a lot of different voters who are going, is the Democratic Party ever going to deliver? Ever. In my lifetime, they've almost never delivered. A lot of blah, 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 and a lot of the media telling me that they're wonderful, right? But like almost no action, right? So the problem, Democrats, you knuckleheads, is that you have to allow the populists within your party. Because if you push out all the populists as they're doing now, then the people are gonna go, oh, okay, I guess there's no populist left-wing option. What's my only other option? Trump and the Republicans. Oh, disaster.